Malkin to talk about the big issue on Friday, which was, of course, the NRA press conference. CEO Wayne LaPierre going out there talking about every school having an armed guard. Good morning to you, Michelle. What did you think? There was not exactly a tremendous amount of support for what Wayne LaPierre said on Friday. Was there in Colorado where you are?
There was a lot of support for many of the ideas that the NRA put forward, but they have faced what I've called the post-Newtown witch hunt over the last week. It's rather unfortunate because there should be a time of sober reflection and an inclusive time for every American with a diverse viewpoint to be a participant in the national conversation about gun violence, about the culture, and somehow so many people, particularly in the crazed anti-gun liberal media, have demonized the NRA and its millions of law-abiding, peaceful gun owners who are practicing their constitutionally protected Second Amendment rights. Self-defense, as so many people out there know, is often the best offense. And they put forth some very good ideas that have been embraced across the country in school districts in Oklahoma, in Texas. There are many armed teachers in this country, and they deserve a voice too.
Absolutely. You talked about a reasoned discussion, though. That was what a lot of many conservatives thought was missing from this press conference. And you mentioned the liberal media, but the New York Post on the front page today calls him a loon, the NRA loon, in a bizarre rant over Newtown. And that they felt what was missing. I heard some conservatives claim that it was tone deaf, the press conference. Tone deaf because it didn't address assault rifles and anything else other than attacks on the media. Seemed to be his focus.
Yeah, well, let me say this. Unfortunately, the Second Amendment groups, lobbyists, activists are damned if they do speak up and damned if they don't. Because for a week, you had a lot of hypocritical attacks and a lot of these zealots who criticized them for maintaining what I thought was a very respectful silence in the immediate aftermath of the massacre. And then when they do come forth with some very practical ideas that have worked, and as I say, ideas that school districts across the country have embraced, they're ridiculed for it. Why aren't these same people ridiculing Barbara Boxer, for example, who has proposed using the National Guard to try and make schools more secure? Then there's the added hypocrisy of many of these celebrities who go after the NRA, who themselves benefit for armed guards. There's this attitude of armed guard for me, but not for thee. And those people need
violent
to be
films, maybe.
Sure, Hollywood violent films. I mean, to your point, Michelle, all of this needs to be talked about. And it would be nice to have a rational national discussion, though, of course, it's hard when people feel so strongly about this. He raised many good points, including why does it say gun-free zone in front of a school, which he argued could serve as an advertisement for somebody with a gun, saying, guess what, we don't have any way to combat you. But I think that what people were objecting to with him was the tone. People were hoping for something perhaps more of a compromise, more conciliatory, and his tone was basically that he was drawing a line in the sand.
Yeah, it's a difficult position to be in. They've been under fire. They're under fire by left-wing media. Now they're under fire by some outlets that had been perceived as conservative. I think that there's this impulse to throw many of my allies on the right under the bus when we're in a panic, which is why I always recommend after these awful events that sometimes sobriety and silence is the best course of action. We've all been so completely overwhelmed. You know, we have to put on our pundit hats. I talked about this earlier this week, and it's the worst part of I hate this part of the job where people feel like they've got to fill the airwaves and score political points. Right. My God, this community is still going to have to be holding funeral after funeral while the rest of the country is celebrating Christmas. And they're really, instead of a national conversation, sometimes I really think we just need to have a national pause. And have people just get their heads straight around it before they speak, and certainly before they act irrationally.
Certainly a lot spoke way too soon. Speaking of violence, there was violence this week regarding, of all things, shoes, Air Jordans. Someone was shot, then later crashed a car all over sneakers. Is there some government solution when it comes to what's happening over these ridiculous new sneakers and the violence that ensues?
Yeah, well, we snarked at Twitchy a couple of days ago, and we saw a lot of the social media buzz about these Air Jordans Bred 11 line that was released this week, that maybe we need sneaker control in this country. We were half joking, but of course now with many of these outbreaks happening, people lined up, the outrage, the blood pressure rising all over a stupid pair of sneakers, especially coming a week after Newtown. It really does make you question where people's values are in this country. And I think this was a theme that you heard a little bit from Wayne LaPierre too, and that doesn't get a lot of play. And there have been a lot of commentators on our airwaves who've pointed out that it's a culture thing. It's not the gun, it's not the specific pair of shoes, it's why don't we value and respect life anymore, for God's sakes?
And then you put in, and one of the things he also brought up was the amount of legislation. So you put in 20,000 gun laws. You want to add another sneaker law to this mix as well? And what does that end up doing for us?
You know, it's this frenzy, it's this impulse, it's this knee-jerk need to regulate and agitate and legislate instead of looking inward and asking where's people's restraint? Right. You know, where's people's focus on the things that really matter to us?
It is a reflective holiday time right now. I mean, thinking about this Christmas and thinking about those families up there, I think a moment of national pause might be exactly what everyone
We
needs.
all should at Christmas time. Michelle, thank you very much for being with us. We appreciate it. Merry Christmas to you.
Thanks, Michelle.
To you too. Take care.